So many of you will have seen the movie Ocean's 11. If you haven't seen it, the plot is effectively a number of characters, 11 in fact, try to break into a casino vault in Las Vegas. And vault break-ins are good Hollywood movie fodder, right? There's kind of something there for everyone. There's a information gathering phase where they try to understand how the vault has been designed, how it's set up. There's an analysing phase where they try to assess weaknesses or vulnerabilities that they can exploit in that setup. And then it ultimately culminates in a wild dash around a casino where they just about manage to escape with the bad guys, gold bars, or hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. So I think instinctively we're all curious and kind of excited by this concept of a vault. And obviously vaults have been designed and built over centuries in the world of atoms. But what's really exciting about the world of bits is that we're going to need similar parallels in the world of bits as we already have in the world of atoms, but it's still so early and there's still so much still to be built out. In Bitcoin's case, it's just over a decade old, so still a huge amount of work to do to build digital equivalents of what we have in the physical world for digital value. So with regards to how to build Bitcoin vaults today, there's a lot of functionality that is already available and sitting on the blockchain today. You can do combinations, ands and ors of single signers, multi-signers, multi-signature. You can have time locks in there, you can have hash locks in there. And so you can have a setup where it's like, these Bitcoin can only be moved if 5 security guards sign that transaction, and then a backup clause of, well, if one of those security guards gets fired or quits their job, maybe after 3 months you only need 4 of those 5 signers. And so there's all sorts of combinations that you can use to build like a basic vault in Bitcoin today. And a lot of this hasn't been built out. If you look at the blockchain today, the vast majority of transactions are just using single signer, they're not even using multi-sig. So there's various reasons why that is the case. I think hardware wallet, hardware sign support is really important. You're generally not going to want to experiment with some of these more complex schemes if you can't integrate devices that you're comfortable with into your vault setup. And dealing with script up until recently with the development of Miniscript has also been very challenging, not only to build the script that matches like your vault design, but ensuring that there aren't any small mistakes or any edge cases where perhaps an attacker could exploit a way to move those Bitcoin with, say, only one signature, when the intention was that at no point could those funds be moved if there weren't at least, say, 3 signatures or 4 signatures or whatever. So still so much to be built out, and yeah, Bitcoin is just over a decade old, right? So still so much more work to do. Once that work is done, I think there's going to be significant demand for some sort of covenant functionality. Now, this has been discussed heatedly this year by the developer community on what exact covenant functionality we would like to enable long-term on Bitcoin. There's been various projects, some Bitcoin opcodes, some Zcash flags, an alternative proposal to completely replace Bitcoin script with a different language called Simplicity. So how covenant functionality is ultimately enabled in Bitcoin is still a question mark, but I'll just briefly go over why you would want covenant functionality within a Bitcoin Vault setup. So today, with the combination of multi-sig, time lock, hash locked, etc., you can impose lots of restrictions and combinations of restrictions on how the Bitcoin can be moved, right? You can almost entirely control what functionality you add to prevent Bitcoin from being moved in the first place. But with covenant functionality, you can impose additional restrictions on where those Bitcoin are moved, assuming that all the constraints have been met to move the Bitcoin in the first place, right? So I definitely think you'll want this in a complex vault setup in the long term. So what you'll want is to say, okay, I've done everything that I can possibly do to maximize my ability to move the Bitcoin when I want to move the Bitcoin, whilst minimizing any possibility of an attacker moving my Bitcoin. But once you've done that, then perhaps you'll start to think, well, assuming an attacker does manage to move my Bitcoin despite all my best efforts, what if I had an additional clause in there where it's like, well, even if you manage to break my vault design, the best you can do is move to an address that I also control. So it's kind of like added insurance. You've managed to break the vault, but like in the Ocean's 11 case, you can only take the gold bars down a certain escape route in the casino where there's another security guard waiting, right? Rather than being able to leave via any exit. So I definitely think long term it'll be wanted in vault setups, but a question mark on how and what kind of covenant functionality is enabled in Bitcoin. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. Just to reiterate, if you're excited by the concept of physical vaults, which we all are, these movies tend to gross hundreds of millions of dollars by themselves. Imagine being at the start of the vault industry, only a decade in, and with an entire industry to build out, and you can be part of it if you learn how Bitcoin script works, if you learn how Bitcoin works, if you learn the required developer skills. You could be one of the earliest participants in building out the digital equivalents of vaults on Bitcoin. So it doesn't really get much more exciting than that.